Hi, this is TheHande, and welcome to another tier list video. You might remember that I've done a couple of these where I ranked, my favorite adventure games and platformer games, and just recently on this channel, I did a video where I talked about Into the Lost Lands, which is the most recent movie from my favorite director, Paul Anderson. And today I'm going to be ranking the films of Paul W.S. Anderson, or just Paul Anderson. Actually, that's something that I did want to mention at the top of this video. It's like, some people might wonder that why does Paul Anderson use his middle initials? He didn't used to, in his very early movies, he was credited as just Paul Anderson. And the reason is actually that he started doing that in the first Resident Evil, and I think the reason for it was that that's when he signed up with the Directors Guild of America, but they already had a Paul Anderson registered, Paul Thomas Anderson. So, because you can't have two guys registered under the same name, that's why he started using it. And I wanted to just say that because I think there's a kind of a common misconception that he started using them to make himself sound like more, more important or fancy or whatever. And that's definitely not Anderson. If you never listened to one of Anderson's audio commentaries on one of his movies, you absolutely should, because he's a very down to earth kind of person. He often talks about just all the stuff that went wrong with all of his movies. He does say some of the positive stuff as well, but that's the reason I always love listening to his commentaries on his own films and stuff like that. So a couple of things. First of all, if you've seen my previous tier list videos, you should know that that the way I normally do this is that I normally, when I do one of these tier list thingies, I usually start with my favorite, my absolute favorite, and then my least favorite, and then I kind of fill out the table that way. But for the purposes of this tier list, I will be going in chronological order, just as a nice way to just basically kind of go through the career, Anderson's career, and how his films have changed over time. You have already noticed that I don't like using the letter grades for these tier lists, so I've modded my own. I decided not to do anything super fancy this time, kept it very simple because there's only 15 movies for me to rank. One of those 15 movies is his TV movie, The Sight, and normally I probably wouldn't bother with a television movie, but because I have seen it, I have the DVD and everything, I decided, well, what the hell, let's put it in there. And lastly, there are 4 Resident Evil movies in the ranking, but I drew the line on movies that Anderson I wanted to make sure that this list was only movies that Anderson has actually directed, which means that Resident Evil Apocalypse and Resident Evil Extinction are excluded from the ranking. Yes, Anderson wrote both of them, he produced both of them, he was very integrally involved in the production of both of those, but he did not direct them. And that's where I draw the line. It doesn't give me any pleasure to do that because those are 2 of the best movies in the whole series. So, yeah, but like I said, that was my distinction. I'm gonna stick to it. Okay, and I think that's enough introductions already. Let's finally get to the ranking. Let's start talking about the movies, and let's start with Anderson's directorial debut, Shopping, and also the acting debut of one of its stars. Yes, that's a that's a baby Jude Law you're seeing right there, with Sadie Frost. This is not the original poster or box art for this, because you can tell because of the text that has mentions of Resident Evil and stuff like that. Okay, I rewatched this last year, and this movie is fascinating because, in a way, it's very unlike a lot of Anderson's later films, but in some ways, it's actually you absolutely can see the things that made Anderson's movies what they are later on. This movie was done on a very low budget. It was done on a television budget for the 90s, which was basically nothing. So the fact that the movie looks as awesome as it does is one of my biggest praises for it. It's also got an entirely British cast, like no American actors yet, because Anderson had obviously not become a big star or anything. And he technically didn't even become a big star off of this. Shopping had a really weird release. Like, it was released theatrically in the UK, but then it was banned from a bunch of places. I talked about this also in the old video. Sorry, probably gonna repeat myself a few times. I didn't rewatch my old films of Paul W.S. Anderson series for this. I honestly, I'm a little afraid too, because the production qualities on those videos weren't very great. But the thing is, like, because the subject matter, because it had to do with youth crime, that's the reason why it got banned in a bunch of places. But then in the US, it got a broad video release thanks to Roger Corman. And that's why Anderson later did Death Race. Roger Corman produced the original Death Race 2000. So Death Race was kind of a belated, thank you basically to Corman for helping sort of kickstart Anderson's career. And this is a pretty grim movie in places. It does not have a happy ending, because it is supposed to depict like these young people just making bad, life choices. But it looks fantastic. The cinematography is awesome, and I love the soundtrack. I think I complained a long time ago that they used Halcyon by Orbital, which is also the song that plays in the ending scene in Mortal Kombat. That I complained a long time ago that they used it a little too much. But honestly, when I rewatch it, I wasn't bothered by it by that much. It kind of works as this nice little leitmotif for the film. The shopping theme also is absolutely fantastic. So the soundtrack is basically what I'm getting at. It's awesome, and all the actors do a really good job. Like I said, the thing about this that it's a very raw film in certain ways. Jonathan Pryce is in it. He's fantastic. And then, of course, with all of these early films, you're going to see Sean Pertwee and Jason Isaacs. Jason Isaacs gets a very small role. He's in like one scene. He's in this film, but he shows up a lot more in the later films. And there are some like, fun moments. Oh yeah, and the other thing, I did say this in the video notes in the Lost Lands video, but yeah, the actor who plays Bebop, who's one of like Jude Law's friends in this, he's the guy who was the evil. I called him a bishop. I think he's called the patriarch in the Lost Lands. No questions about it. For such an early movie, this is fucking fantastic. If you can hunt the video down, and the DVD is probably the most common way you can probably see this. I highly recommend it. This is a really good movie. Fantastic job. And I have no reservations. It's one of Anderson's best movies, easily. Then Mortal Kombat. This was the movie that introduced me to Paul W.S. Anderson, but this was obviously I didn't, when I saw it back in the 90s, like I didn't know who he was, anything. But this is the film that really like made him famous. And Mortal Kombat has a very like special place in the annals of video game movie adaptations, because the creators of Mortal Kombat, the original video game, they loved the movie as well, and they lifted a lot of things from it into the games. And it's a fascinating story about this. So, but one thing that I will say, of these 90s Anderson movies, Mortal Kombat is actually kind of the odd man out, if you can believe that, because it wasn't done by Anderson's production company, Impact Pictures. This was entirely oh my god, New Line Cinema. Yeah, this was entirely a New Line Cinema dealio. But Anderson became like really good friends with almost all of the actors. He still is good friends with all of the actors. Robin Shaw, for instance, has helped him out in a bunch of movies later on. Robin Shaw kind of became the unofficial sort of fight choreographer for the film as well, because if you don't know, he was like a legit Hong Kong stuntman before he did this film. And there's a funny story that he actually didn't want to do it because when he was being pitched it, or when he was being offered it, he hadn't read the script. He thought he was going to be like the Asian sidekick, and he thought like, I don't want to do that. And then when he finally read the screenplay and thought like, oh, I'm the hero. Okay, well that's different. And I do feel bad for Robin Shaw that he never became like a huge star because of this. Because Mortal Kombat, like, it hit like right at the perfect moment in the mid 90s. It's just around that time. I don't remember if Rumble in the Bronx came out just before this. I think they're both 95, and I think Mortal Kombat came out like in the autumn. So, but it was right around that time when there was like this big arts movie boom. And because Jackie Chan made his like big American break at that point, and then in the next couple of years, like suddenly like everybody realized, oh shit, people love like martial arts movies now, so they started pushing them onto the market. You know, even like older movies getting re-released on video and what have you. And it's, obviously some of the special effects have not aged very well, but Anderson's like visual acumen, like the fight scenes, everything, the scenery, the sets, everything looks fantastic. The soundtrack is amazing. That's the other thing that like Anderson was a big fan of like techno music already, and you can kind of hear it a little bit in Shopping, but he admitted that he was just like very fortunate that he just happened to that his musical taste just happened to align with what was going to be like hot in the music industry right at that moment, which is why the soundtrack of this has is also like really aged really well, because all the scenes are built around it. This is a fun action martial arts fantasy romp. This is a leave your brain at the door kind of movie. It's not going to make it in the great rank. As much as I like it, I am going to have to put it in the good rank. And the other thing to say about this movie, I love this. I have a lot of nostalgia for this. But here's the thing. I have watched so many Hong Kong martial arts movies since watching this. And you don't even have to watch that many. Like, you watch a couple, and then when you go back to watch Mortal Kombat, it feels like the fight scenes are in slow motion. It's like, it's not Anderson's fault. Like, he hadn't done a martial arts movie before this. He didn't know what this, where the standard was. But like the standard for Hollywood fight scenes was like somewhere here. So Mortal Kombat was like right around here. So they're still really good, fantastic like fight scenes and everything. And with the audio, with the music and the sound effects, especially, they work amazingly. And that's the other thing is like Anderson actually had to fight to get a couple of the fight scenes in. Like New Line Cinema originally wasn't going to. Originally, they didn't want to film the second half of the Johnny Cage Scorpion fight, and they didn't want to film the Liu Kang reptile fight. And then when the test screening, when the audience said that there should be more fighting, like then they changed their mind and they luckily filmed those extra fight scenes. All right, and now Event Horizon. I just very recently actually rewatched this. So this is one of Anderson's hardest films. Like this film honestly kind of makes me sad that Anderson never became like a hard like horror film director, because he absolutely fucking nailed it. Which is funny because if you know anything about Event Horizon, one thing that you should know, it had a really difficult production. And that's the other weird thing. Like Anderson has kind of like this weird kind of mixed relationship on this film. On one hand, he's like very happy that he actually did it at this point in his career, because he was kind of aiming towards more like for a more broader audience, which he was trying to kind of connect with with his next film. But he's happy that he did do like a very hard horror film at this point, because he wasn't sure like if he ever would get to do that. And it's kind of funny considering like where his career would end up taking him. But at the same time, he does have a lot of like, regrets regarding the movie, because so much stuff that he wanted to happen in it couldn't be done because the film had a very difficult, like, condensed production. Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne are excellent in this. Sean Pertwee is also in this, and so is Jason Isaacs, and they're fantastic. And the funny part is, like, it's trying to go for a slightly more realistic sci-fi thing, but it's also a supernatural horror movie. So there's a lot of shit in it that doesn't make any sense. And the Event Horizon is the most impractically designed spaceship ever, but that's because it's designed to look scary. And it's very effective. This movie is honest to God. This is a lot of people's favorite Anderson movie, and I don't blame them at all. Like, the first couple of times I watched it, I don't think I was like that big of a fan. I don't know. I felt I got a little bit squeamish about it, but you know what? I do have to recognize for what it is. It's fantastic. It has to go up here. Just absolutely grade A horror film. One of my favorite horror films. I'm trying to remember. I did do a top 10 horror films video like a long time ago. I don't think it's up anymore, but I'm pretty sure Event Horizon was on there because it is legitimately just really, really good. Soldier. All right. So, you know, like I said, I haven't rewatched my, old videos on these Anderson films, but people probably might remember that this is my favorite Paul W. Anderson movie. And it's a very, and basically, the way that I would summarize is that this is the kind of movie I would make. It's a science fiction drama film, and Kurt Russell is the reason why it's so goddamn good. So he plays a character who was, even from infancy, was handpicked by the military to become a soldier. He's lived his entire life in the military, doing missions, never showing any emotion. And then there's this new generation of like gene manipulated soldiers that are replacing him and his old crew. And then he gets like knocked out, and they think he's dead. So he gets dumped on a junkyard planet, and meets a bunch of settlers who were lost there years ago. And then we slowly begin to learn that actually Todd does have emotions, and he is a human being after all. And I really love that. It's hard to really sell because Kurt Russell's characters that for the most part of the movie is like he's just so stone faced, and he's not supposed to look human. But then you kind of like, as the movie goes on, you start to see the glint of humanity in him, and that's what I love about him. It's very subtle. I totally understand why this movie bombed at the box office. Well, there were a lot of things that went against it. Like, one of the things was that it went dramatically over budget because I think what happened was that they had some outdoor sets that got destroyed and they had to rebuild them from scratch. And then Anderson also blames Warner Brothers that in the marketing they focus too much on the action. And don't get me wrong, there are action scenes. It is not an action movie. Like I said, it's a drama film. It's one of the Andersons, I think, one of his most like mature movies. And that's the reason I like it. That's why it resonates with me, because the characters are surprisingly deep. Sean Pertwee is like the dad. He's one of the settlers. He's like he has a family, and he does such a great job in his part as well. And there's a bunch of other great actor performances. And Jason Isaacs is the villain in this one. It really makes me sad he's not the villain in any of other Anderson's other movies. This is the last time he had like a big role in one of Anderson's movies. And well, he has a noticeable part in Resident Evil, but it was like an uncredited cameo basically. But yeah, I love this movie. This is absolutely, if I had started with my favorites, this is the one that I would have started with. I absolutely fucking love this movie. And this is another one, I really feel bad for Anderson, because Anderson really doesn't like talking about Soldier because, well, okay, I get why. It's the movie that nearly killed his film career. He was only 4 movies in, and he was almost like it was almost like over for him at this point because the movie lost so much money. So yeah, okay, I get why he doesn't like talking about it. I love this. I completely unironically, genuinely love this, and it was really hard for me. I remember to even find like the DVD for a long while. It's a really weird DVD. It's one of those double-sided ones because on the other side, it's in 4.3 aspect ratio, and on the other side, then it's the full aspect ratio. Okay, the site. So after Soldier bombed, Anderson thought, well, shit, I guess that's my career's over now, as far as like theatrical films are concerned. So he was very genuinely considering going into television. He had started in television, and then he did Shopping, his first theatrical movie, and then he decided like, okay, now I gotta like actually build up to a real film career. But then when Soldier bombed, he thought like, well, okay, let's just do a television movie. And the site was meant to be like, a pilot essentially to a television show. So it's about It's about a an architect who sees dead people. You can probably tell that there was a little bit of Sixth Sense influence here. And he tries to solve the murder of a bunch of guys who were killed around London. So the main character is an American, but then he moves to London. And again, considering that this is a TV movie, it looks amazing. Like Anderson's like visual eye still is just as amazing as it is. I really like the setting. I really like the interactions with the ghosts. There are no big actors in this, okay? And when I said Jason Isaacs does appear in this, but he's like at the very end. He gets a tiny, tiny cameo as a ghost. Production quality is amazing. Now, what's really funny, this is one of the if you know kind of thing. So, Resident Evil, his first Resident Evil movie, because it was a prequel, it was meant to be a prequel to the games. He was given Anderson was kind of given kind of carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wanted. So he modeled a lot of the characters in Resident Evil after Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Where did he get that idea from? Well, clearly from this movie, because in this film, because what ended up happening then with Resident Evil, he did peel back some of it. He felt that some of it was a little bit, some of the Alice in Wonderland things were a bit on the nose, so he kind of peeled it back a bit. So it's more subtle in that film. But here, it's very obvious. Like, they like quote the book directly in a couple of scenes as well. And the little girl who got murdered, which kind of kicks off the story, she's played by Michelle Dicker, who then went on to be the Red Queen in Resident Evil. So there's an interesting level of overlap between this and the first Resident Evil movie that I really like and dig. As a movie, I have to be honest and say it's kind of mid. The big problem is the mystery. It just doesn't work. The film spends a lot of time misdirecting the audience into thinking like one of the characters is the killer, and then when we're finally told like who the killer actually is, it's super anticlimactic. It's like I barely even remember. In fact, I don't think I quite remember like how the revelation. I do remember who the murderer is, but I don't remember how the revelation scene happens. But like Anderson spent like so much time like misdirecting the audience, and then the ending, it just kind of, the film kind of fizzles out at the end. So that's my biggest complaint with it. And it's a shame because that opening part is really promising. The only part in the opening that I don't like is when they're still in, I don't remember, was he supposed to be in New York or whatever? That scene that's supposed to be taking place at like the street corner in New York, it looks so fake. It is so, they try so hard to make it look like a busy scene, and there's like 3 actors there, and they're just putting in like blaring sound effects of cars to try to sell that that's like the one scene that in the whole movie that doesn't work. But there is a lot of, I would say the site is worth seeing maybe once, but maybe not any repeat watches. It's just not a really good movie. Okay, then the first Resident Evil. This is one of my, not just, objectively, this is not just the best movie in the Resident Evil series. This is one of my favorite horror movies, period. Again, just like Event Horizon, this movie does make me wish Anderson had really kind of committed to making like actual like hard horror movies, because he's actually really good at it. Like this movie, so this movie did get some shit back in the day, obviously, because it's a prequel to it was meant to be a prequel to the video games. It doesn't feature any of the characters from the games. But Anderson did play the game and try to kind of incorporate like character archetypes, like recognizable archetypes into the film. Personally, I never really minded. And the big reason was probably, of course, that at this point when I saw it for the first time, because I bought this on VHS. That's how long ago this movie happened. I hadn't played the first Resident Evil. I didn't know anything about the characters. I was just, and I didn't know that this same guy directed Mortal Kombat. I had no idea at the time. And then when I saw it, I thought to myself, man, that was a good movie. Like, it is absolutely, like, everything that I've said up to this point about his, like, visual direction, it really works. The Hive is just super creepy with its, like, sterile, hallways. And then the soundtrack by Marilyn Manson, like, and Marco Beltrami. It's one of the best soundtracks ever. It's one of my all time favorites. Like it's right up there with the Terminator, Labyrinth. Hell, let's throw in Star Wars there. Like the thing is like it's the same. I get the same vibe with this as I do with the original Terminator. Like where every single piece of music is perfectly married with every single scene. It's that fucking good. And again, it pains me that Anderson didn't really stick to this style in the sequels. Because starting from Apocalypse, he got kind of wrapped up in the action side of things. And don't get me wrong, there's a couple of like silly action scenes in this first movie, but not that much. It's a much more grounded movie than the sequels. That's the reason why it's always been my favorite, and that's why it's still my favorite of the films of the series. So no questions asked, this goes into the great territory. And my biggest regret with this film is just that, that the sequels kind of failed to follow up on it. All right, so like I said, the action side of things. So Alien versus Predator, this is another leave your brain at the door film. And I do seem to recall that in the video where I discussed this a long time ago, I made it very clear that this film is nowhere near as good as any of the 4 original Alien movies. Those are just on a different level cinematically. Even the first one, which I'm personally not even a big fan of. I don't really like the first Alien movie. Kind of puts me to sleep. I'm gonna be honest. But like visually, stylistically, thematically, like yeah, the first 4 Alien movies are awesome. And this one is an excuse to get 2 movie monsters to fight each other. So that's what I'm saying. It's really entertaining. I love the action scenes in this. The other thing that does come through is that Anderson is a much bigger Alien fan than a Predator fan. Like this movie is more Alien. This is really an Alien movie, also guest starring the Predators, and because they really only like the Predators only really like start actually doing stuff like about halfway into the film. The cast of characters are very expendable. I'm not gonna lie; they're there basically just to get creamed. That's the long and short of it. I do like the leading lady, Sanaa Lathan. She's not an Ellen Ripley, absolutely not. I'm not saying that. But like I said, this is a fun, stupid action romp movie, and if you take it in like that, it's fantastic. I love it. And certainly way better than the sequel. This movie, like at least the visually, like I like the idea of the underground, pyramid that it's in the Antarctic. Like there's a lot of cool shit in this, and like I said, it's very obvious like how much Anderson loves the Alien movies because he pulled all the stops: the Alien Queens, the Facehuggers, the Chest Bursters, all of it. But yeah, so don't expect this to be like the Alien movies are kind of dark and depressing. This is just kind of like a silly action movie, so take it like that. So there's no way that this is going into the great territory. This is going into the good territory with Mortal Kombat. It's in my view, it's kind of very similar. Like maybe a little bit darker just because most of the main characters die. But it is more of a tongue-in-cheek experience. Speaking of which, here's Death Race. We've already discussed this. So it's a prison flick. It's a car movie. It has Jason Statham in the main role, and Joan Allen as the warden. Like, is absolutely fantastic. This is another leave your brain at the door movie. It's absolutely absolutely fantastic. I love it. And the irony is that it's a much gorier movie than AVP, actually. So there's quite a lot of splatter in this one, and that's the way I like it. So there is an honest attempt here to give it a bit of a serious storyline because Jason Statham is obviously he's framed for murder and sent to jail, where they have and the reason the Death Race exists is because it brings in money for the jail. So this movie is sometimes called a remake of Death Race 2000. Honestly, it's not really a remake. It's more of, I guess, a homage in a way. it does use some of the elements of Death Race 2000, but Death Race 2000 was way more tongue in cheek. Like, um, it was like it was almost like cartoonish, and this is a little bit. This is a lot more intense. Actually, it's a great movie. I highly recommend it. Another leave your brain at the door movie. But yeah, so this one also not gonna go into the great territory. This is another. This is a fun time, absolutely fun time. So highly recommend it. Okay, and now we're getting into the latter day Resident Evils, and we're gonna have to start with Afterlife. And you know, I have made no secret that I don't really like Afterlife. This was the first movie that I went to see in 3D, and basically I was forced to because there was no 2D showing. At least I don't think there was. Like, Anderson, as much as I love Anderson, like, he went a little too hard on the whole 3D gimmick. Here's the thing, this film is really directionless. There's one part of it that I do genuinely love. Well, maybe a couple of incidental parts, but I like the opening. I love the opening with all the Alice clones. It's pretty crazy and action-packed, and, that's the reason I like it. I do like the battle with Wesker towards the end of the film, and then the battle with the Axeman is also pretty nice. But the story doesn't really make any sense. This film really did make me wish that, and they originally did intend to end the Resident Evil film series on Extinction, and I think that would have been the good call, because the ending of Extinction was so good. But then, Capcom kept bugging Anderson to make another one, and then he decided, well, what the hell, let's make another one. And this movie does start that unfortunate trend, which finally kind of culminates in the final chapter, where here it starts like relatively small time, but this movie does retcon, or it inserts a plot element that wasn't in the previous film, but tries to explain that this is why Alice is doing these things. It has to do with the ship, and yeah, so, and you also get this bunch of new supporting characters who are just all expendable. They all get killed off as the movie goes on. None of them become important. And even one that was probably meant to be important, Chris Redfield is finally introduced in this movie. And that's the other thing I really hated with these sequels. Like, even the good ones, even Apocalypse and Extinction, I hate that they kept trying to kind of pluck characters from the games and putting them in the movie. I know why they did that. They did that because, okay, now we're making sequels. Now we have to start including game characters. But their stories just aren't that interesting because the film series is, it's about Alice. Alice is the main character. The one positive here, though, is that they recast Wesker for this film, and he's so much better than the Wesker from the previous film. So I'm happy that they stuck with him. I'm forgetting the I don't remember the actor's name right now, but like that was at least one genuinely good thing. But yeah, I don't enjoy watching this one. This is one of the Resident Evil movies that I personally just don't. I have a hard time watching. We'll circle back to it on the next Resident in a couple of movies' time. But now let's talk about the Three Musketeers. This is another super fun movie, like super stacked cast. Christoph Waltz as Richelieu, Orlando Bloom as Count Buckingham. And Mads Mikkelsen, you can barely see he's there as Count Rushfort, and then all these other guys who played the rest of the Musketeers. This film really is just the Three Musketeers, but with airships. That's pretty much the whole gimmick. But that's what I love about it. And that is a thing. In recent years, I have actually started to, think I should get around to watching all the different Three Musketeers film adaptations, because I've seen a couple recently, and now I'm thinking, like, just for completion's sake, I should see a bunch of more. And this one has a lot of comedy in it, which I love. The action scenes are great, and again, visually, absolutely fantastic looking movie. It's just a good time. And if you don't take it too seriously, it's great. And yes, there is a kind of a controversial person here as a comic relief. I'll I'll just not mention him and say here that, if you go into this again, it's another leave your brain at the door. Oh yeah, and the fucking fight scene between D'Artagnan and Rushford on top of Notre Dame Cathedral. Just grade A cinema. Absolutely 10 out of 10 fight scene. I love that. It is such a great way to end a movie. Just absolutely love that. Okay, Resident Evil Retribution. So, this is the fifth film, and the tragedy of Retribution, in my opinion, is that this film really tried. Like, with this film, it felt like Anderson was really trying to make up for the failings of Afterlife, because I'm not gonna lie, I do like this movie better than Afterlife for a number of reasons. Namely, that it's visually just way cooler. Because this is where it's revealed that the Red Queen is running these different simulations of like T-virus incidents in an underground world, and there's that opening scene where Alice is like a suburban mom. And I love that opening scene, and I love everything associated with that. And because you have all these different scenes in the underground simulations, that's why the movie looks so good. And it was really setting up for these, that Wesker wasn't actually what we thought he was, and then the revelation that the Red Queen was back. I wasn't a big fan of that revelation, but there were so many like promising things in this. I also love the fight that the heroes fight against Michelle Rodriguez at the end. And because they're all clones, it gave them an excuse to bring back a bunch of the actors whose characters had died in the previous films. I do feel like the clones weren't necessarily used very well in quite a few places. It's a shame that almost nothing in this movie is relevant to the plot of the final chapter. That's the tragedy of this one. That it did so much. It did so much heavy lifting to try to kind of make us see like, oh, there was a point to what went on in Afterlife. And it just totally just falls flat because of all the shit that happens in the final chapter. And particularly, Ada Wong and Leon, like, I like the actors that they cast for those roles, and the fact that they're not in the sequel at all, that was a huge missed opportunity. I do kind of wish there was another rank between good and mid, but listen, I said that you kind of, if you're gonna watch these latter-day Resident Evil movies, you kind of have to watch them all in a row, and even then they don't really make a lot of sense because of, the final chapter. I do, out of all the movies here in the mid territory, I do think Resident Evil Retribution is objectively the best one, just because it's so audio-visually so good. And it has so many great action set pieces. It's a fun ride from start to finish. But ultimately, the thing that I get always pissed off about with it is the fact that it promised so much, and then the sequel didn't deliver, and that's why it's kind of a pointless movie when you stop to really think about it. Okay, Pompeii. I mentioned Pompeii in my video where I was talking about In the Lost Lands, and I talked about how In the Lost Lands was Anderson's best movie since this movie. Ballsy move to make a movie where the audience knows that everybody is gonna die because it's the Pompeii, volcanic eruption. But this movie is fantastic. I rewatched this last year, and I was just reminded of just how fucking good it is. The soundtrack, the visuals, the characters. My favorite... I'm just gonna start listing some of my favorite characters, basically. Atticus, the Black Gladiator dude, I loved him. The guy running the gladiator ring, the guy playing him did an absolutely fantastic job. And then Kiefer Sutherland fucking hamming it up as the villain. Like, I get such huge vibes of like Raul Julia in the Street Fighter movie. He did such a good job, and a lot of awful shit happens to a bunch of the characters. Like, I forget how, the leading ladies, like, parents die in the film. Like, it's really sad. It's like, there's so much, like, this is a catastrophe film, at its, like, purest, because that nobody is walking away alive from it. But the way all the characters then meet their ends, it's really, really, like, I know, maybe I'm using this word wrong, but I would say this is peak cinema, honestly. The only thing, I would say, the only thing about the film that, in hindsight, I didn't really like, and this actually surprised me a bit, is like, I do think the romance angle was a bit forced. It didn't really work for me. Um, but it is such a small part of the film. It is such a minuscule element in the film that it doesn't actually ruin the movie for me. It only comes to play in like a couple of scenes. Uh, this film is good. This film is legit, really, really good. And yeah, I do think this is like Anderson's best movie, like last truly great film, and that's why it has to go into the great category. Which you know that then, the rest are gonna go lower. All right, we haven't put anything in the bad category yet. But you guys knew it was coming. Resident Evil, the final chapter. Uh, so, I hate repeating myself from older videos, but I do think I need to repeat a little bit here. So in the Lost Lands video, I said that my main complaints with this film was that it's like visually so dark that you can barely tell what's going on. It's not a fun movie to watch because it just oozes of, okay, we gotta wrap this up, we gotta wrap this up, we gotta get to the finale and what have you. I thought it was kind of a weird decision to go back to the Hive and all that other shit. The fact that it turns out that Dr. Isaacs has been alive this whole time, which means that the Dr. Isaacs that died at the end of Extinction was a clone. That always like bugs me. That bugs me because it kind of ruins the impact of that finale, which was fantastic. I love the ending of Extinction, so this one was kind of cheapening it a bit. And then there's all the retcons. That was like in the old video, that was like the main thing that really bothered me about it. Is like, why would you just change those plot details at in the final movie? That makes no fucking sense. Like it's like completely ruining the emotional impact that that this film could have had. And there wasn't really any good reason for it. That's the other big part. Like the movie could have made sense as much as anything in the Resident Evil films makes sense without having changed all of those things. Like, I think the fact was just that they just wanted to make such a big deal about Alicia Marcus. That's why they retconned, like, okay, it was her dad who made the T virus and not Dr. Ashford from from Apocalypse. But that is still like pretty shameless. Like, because these movies are supposed to all be in the same continuity, and this film just makes it impossible to even to even think that way. And then it's just not a fun movie. That's just the bottom line, like, with it. I hate this film. This is unquestionably, like, no matter how big of a fan you are of any director, every director makes at least one kind of a bad film. This one is absolutely, it's bad. It is bad. That's why it's in the bad category. Monster Hunter. Okay, I talked about Monster Hunter a bit in the other video, and actually after making that video, I did re-watch it, and I noticed that I kind of explained some of the plot details kind of poorly, especially like the ending, like so the ending where the medical helicopter comes down, and then Alice kills the big monster, and then she is reunited with Tony Jaa's character, and then they go and fight the other big monster. It's still a bad finale. It still feels like the film doesn't actually have a proper ending. But, I explained it badly, so I felt obligated to explain that. Okay, the thing that I did notice when I rewatched this, I really liked the first hour of this film. Like, when it's Jovovich and Tony Jaa, and they're running around in the wasteland and trying to survive all the different monsters, that part is fucking awesome. It's visually really good, and the thing that I liked about it is because Alice... no, I keep calling her Alice. What, Captain Artemis? Yeah, that's her character. When Artemis and Tony Jaa meet, because they're from different worlds, they don't speak the same language. So there's quite long periods in the first half of Monster Hunter where there's no dialogue, and I really like that. Because it forced the film to tell the story visually for the most part, and it works really well. The action scenes are amazing. Uh, I'm not a big monster movie guy, but I loved the monster effects. Like they looked really, really good in this. And where the movie starts to kind of slip again into sleepy territory for me is after they finally take down Diablos, and then they go into the desert and everything that happens after that point. Like I was like, yeah, okay, now I'm not really feeling this, and it's partly because I knew how the movie was gonna end. That it was like, yeah. Now we're just kind of sliding towards the end. But the first half of this film actually is legit good. Legit good. It's not a good movie overall. Like there is still like half an hour for 40 minutes of the film that is kind of like eh. I also I wasn't like a super fan of all the army stuff at the very beginning. They get past that point where they set up the film. They get past that fairly quickish, so it doesn't like take that long. But this one is not like a super good movie. Like, I would say this is almost, I think Retribution and Monster Hunter are pretty even Stevens, but I think Retribution actually holds on to like how good it is, like a little bit better. So I'm willing to say that Retribution is like the best movie in the mid category, and Monster Hunter is like a close second place. So I would say both of these movies, at least, as well as The Side, I think are worth watching at least once. But yeah, but there's no way I'm not putting it in the good territory. It wasn't like, amazing. And finally, we come to the final film. The reason I'm doing this rank in the first place, In the Lost Lands. You remember that I said that I really liked this movie. I rewatched it after making the video again, and it was funny because I laughed a bit when I realized that I called Mila Jovovich Alice. I did it, I just did it again because third movie in a row where Anderson's wife plays the lead role. But actually, that's the funny thing that I don't know if everybody knows about this, but Jovovich was the guy. Jovovich was the one who was pushing to make this movie. It was originally like just her personal project, and then when she was having difficulty getting it to the finish line, she finally realized, oh wait, my husband is an established film director, Paul, could you maybe give a hand with this one? And I liked it. I genuinely really liked it. It's funny, and it's visually great, and like everything I said, in the review, it's true. I like the fact that it's a condensed, self-contained narrative. I like the characters, even if they are a little bit simplistic. I genuinely just love Dave Bautista, and it looks great. There's something, I watched this movie with my friend Ville. There was something that he said, though, that kept bothering me all through the damn movie. Oh, yeah, and I want to correct a little bit something. Like, I said, again, something I explained a bit badly. I said that there were no real locations in this. I mean, there are live sets in the film, pretty obviously live sets. But then all the exterior shots are all digital. That's what I was saying. And that's the thing that Ville said, that, oh, look at those CG horses. And I wasn't even thinking about the horses. And then it kept bothering me. I kept looking at the movie for a very long time and thinking, are the horses CG? But, there was one scene that made me think, oh, no. They must have just had like a giant green screen, and they just had somebody ride a horse, on there for, a few scenes. But it is definitely like, for the first hour or so of the movie, the only time you see the horses is either like when people are on horseback, you either see them from really far away, or then it's like an extreme close up. Is this movie great? I don't think so. Like, I liked it. I genuinely liked it, but I do have to say that, like what I said, it's a bit derivative. It is a bit like Anderson does repeat a certain few things. There's another really funny thematic thing that I noticed, like as they're going through the Lost Lands, like they go through all these different forms of energy. Like there's a wind farm, they go into a nuclear reactor, there's an oil field. Like I noticed that was kind of a really funny little detail that I was reminded of when I rewatched it. It is a good movie. It's a fun movie, but I think it's more. I think it's more at home here with the rest of these guys. I think story wise, I do think story wise, this might be the best out of all of these movies that are up here, easily. But like I said, it's more of a leave your brain at the door sort of dealio. All right, so that was the ranking. Like I said, I was in a big Anderson kick. I just genuinely love his movies, and as you can see, it's pretty even for the most part. Like, you're gonna have a few stinkers in the mix always, no matter how much you like a certain director. But yeah, like these ones right up here, these are highly recommended. If you have not seen these movies, I highly recommend seeking them out and checking them out. And then if you just want something, something to munch popcorn to, then the stuff down here is perfect for that. Okay, but that was the ranking. I'm Hunter the Hunter Mackin, and see you on the next one.